All right, let's talk about efficiency of the draw. All right, guys, so I believe that one of the most important fundamentals that you can hope to master is the draw behind grip and vision. Why? Because the draw is what's going to establish that practical grip and that practical vision out of the holster, right? Not ideal, not the most ideal grip, not the most ideal vision. It's going to give you what you get, right? So the more that we can kind of concentrate on the draw and make that draw as efficient and as consistent as possible, the better our grip's going to be, the better it's going to facilitate our vision coming out of the holster, right? Hopefully that makes sense. Now, bear in mind, it is impossible for me to teach you everything that there is about the draw via YouTube video, right? No matter what you hear, who your favorite influencer is, any of that stuff, you're never going to get that true, in-person instructor feedback from a video, but we can give you some things to think about, which is what we're going to do today. So I'm going to give you my 3 biggest tips on how to make your draw more efficient and more predictable each and every time. Okay, so to start, we're going to talk about holster positioning and holster placement, right? So for this, I'm actually going to drop the camera down a little bit and I'm going to angle it towards my belt. It's going to be awkward because you're going to kind of be looking at my pelvic area, but it's the best way to explain it. So let's do that real quick. All right, guys, bear with me. I know it's kind of awkward. However, so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about holster positioning on the hip line. So as you can see, if I were to try to put my hand in my front pocket, I can't. My holster is sitting over top of that, and that's by design. So essentially, we want to take that midpoint of our hips. I never want to place my holster behind here, right? It's why 4 o'clock carry is kind of inefficient. I want to be able to place this at my midline or even slightly forward. Why? Because our arms go like this naturally. That's why pockets are like this on pants. I want my holster to be in the most ergonomic position possible, right? I don't want to have to reach for my holster. I just want to be able to naturally come up and find my gun on my holster, or I want to be able, if I believe in doing this, to come through and be able to find that just by stabbing down if I need to, right? There are some instances where that would probably make some sense. So I want to make sure this is positioned properly. Now, once we get this position on our hip line, let's talk about holster cant. I prefer a slightly negative cant, which means that it's slightly angled backwards, because as I come up for a scoop draw here, my hand comes up, meets that trigger guard right there, right here, and as I come up, the gun comes up with me, just like that. So, first thing to pay attention to is that positioning of the holster on your hip line, right? I see people do it in any number of ways. Now, no matter what works for you, it needs to be consistent. It needs to be the same exact place every single time. Me, I use my front pocket as kind of a reference point. The gun always goes over here, and then I wrap the rest of the belt around myself. Hopefully that helps. All right, guys, the next one and the second tip I'm going to give you. Bear in mind efficiency and don't try to reverse directions unless you absolutely have to, right? So if I get the option to just kind of put my wrist below my belt, I'm always going to take it. Why? Because it makes more sense to bring everything up together like this, right, than it does to do one of these. Because essentially what I'm doing is I'm reversing directions, right? Here I'm coming down just to come back up and present the gun. Versus here, I am coming everything up and out at the same time, right? I never have to reverse directions. Anytime you have to reverse directions in shooting, it's a little bit of inefficiency, right? And we're not talking about stage planning. We're not talking about stuff like that. We're talking just about the fundamentals of shooting, right? Same thing could be said when we're talking about in-flight reset and prepping the trigger and all that stuff. If I fire a shot and I come all the way out here, right, versus just right to where my trigger resets at, that's inefficiency. It's excess movement. Same thing with the draw. It just looks slightly different. Leads me into my next point that I'm going to talk about, which is getting both hands to the gun as fast as possible. Oh, real quick, I forgot to show you. So like that was a traditional scoop where I just come like up and out. You can do kind of a modified one where you scoop it into your body. I think Brennan over at Gateway Defense is kind of a big proponent for that. So it's kind of one of these things where it's like he kind of scoops it up into his body, hand marries, and he presents out. So there's different ways to do the scoop draw. Don't get sucked into like a single track minded thought and say, I'm only going to come down on top and stab down. I'm only going to scoop. Different situations are going to require different things. It's obviously impossible to scoop draw if I'm coming here, right? Hands above shoulders, because then at that point, my only option is to come directly down to the gun. It makes no sense for me to go down underneath just to come back up. At that point, it is more efficient to do the stab down. And I'm definitely not the fastest at it. One more time for good measure. That was a pretty good one. All right, let's talk about the next point. All right, guys, third and final point when we're talking about efficiency of the draw is going to be getting both hands to the gun as soon as possible. This is highly inefficient, right? So if I was to start like this, my normal shooting stance, and the timer goes off, we'll hit a timer. Horribly inefficient. Very inconsistent grip by the time I hit full presentation. This hand's late to the party. Nothing really feels right versus doing something kind of like this. Right? That feels much better. Much, much better. There's multiple reasons why getting your two hands on the gun sooner is better. One, I have more time to build my grip and let that sink in. One of the most common issues I see, and I even see in myself sometimes when I'm experimenting and my fundamentals start breaking down because I'm pushing speed and I'm pushing speed and I'm pushing speed, is my grip is not set by the time I hit presentation, but I'm ready to fire. My brain tells me go ahead and pull the trigger despite my grip not actually being set in place, right? If I don't start my grip till right here, right, that's not a lot of room to really get anything sunk in. If I start my grip back in here, I have all this time up and out to the target. That is going to be efficient, right? The second thing is the sooner that our grip is set, the sooner our brain should register and our vision should give us permission to pull the trigger, right? If I'm coming up here and I'm doing one of these things, and I'm coming up and it's like, when I come up to here and I marry this hand, there's a little bit of disruption in my dot. Versus if I do it nice and smooth and easy, my dot's right there, my dot's not moving at all. At least not I don't have the perception that the dot's moving, right? So again, why is the draw important? Because it's establishing the onset of our grip and our vision. Well, getting two hands on the gun is what's going to help with both. It's going to build my grip sooner, therefore by the time I hit full presentation, I should have my master grip built. Also, I'm not disrupting the dot upon presentation nearly as much as I would should I be slapping my hand on the gun right at the last second. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, guys, so hopefully those tips help you out. I really think the draw is super important behind grip and vision because I believe that trigger manipulations just kind of come into play as you build your grip and you get more comfortable with it. I don't really drill that a ton. There's some things to understand about trigger manipulations, but it doesn't really dictate a whole lot of live fire range time. Really, neither does the draw. You can get a ton of free reps doing this at home in dry fire. I know you guys hear that all the time from all sorts of instructors, but it's true. It's how a lot of us stay, kind of on top of the ball a little bit, at least as best we can when we can't make it to the range, right? A little bit of dry fire, 5 to 10 minutes a day goes a long way. You can over dry fire, so be conscious of that. Maybe we'll talk about that sometime. I really want you guys to, go out and experiment and film yourself, look at your own draw and tell yourself, like, where are my inefficiencies happening? That was 7 yards, and I was able to deliver a shot in I believe it was a 7.8. I believe that was in a 7.8, right? Guys, that's pretty baseline for me at 7 yards now. If I know what I'm going to be doing and I'm coming into it knowing that it's, a relatively close target within that 7 to 0 range, and I can pretty much get that quick level 1 sight picture confirmation, place my shots. But it all starts with the draw, right? No one ever starts a match or even starts a defensive engagement at the low ready, right? Something to think about, guys. I appreciate you stopping by watching the video. Make sure you check out the sponsors. We got Brownells, we got Winchester Armament, we got Modern Material Rifles, we got Gorilla Gunworks Zipling, Locks & Company Hair Products, Crate Tactical. I think that's it. If you guys have any questions, drop it in the comments down below. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, all that social media stuff. Guys, appreciate you stopping by. Thank you. Stay safe, stay trained. I'll be back with the next one.